Good morning, America. Israel Prime Minister stands firm as anger grows. Overnight, large protests outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem, calling on Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal, as the Prime Minister insists Israel will not make additional concessions. The reaction from the White House this morning as it works to reach an agreement to bring the rest of the hostages home.
The race for the White House in high gear. Vice President Harris on a swing through the battleground states, campaigning with President Biden for the first time since he dropped out of the race. Plus our new poll, a look at the state of the race in those key swing states.
Attacked. 2 U.S. Marines assaulted on the streets of Turkey, a mob putting a bag over one of their heads. More than a dozen people taken into custody.
Hero police sergeant.
I had told him out there, be strong like you are on the field.
How she helped save 49ers rookie Ricky Pearsall after he was shot in an attempted robbery.
New video showing a teen driver going nearly 140 miles per hour, just months before police say he killed a friend riding with him in a high-speed crash, as the victim's family pushes authorities to criminally charge the driver's mother.
Hang up inside one school with strict cell phone guidelines.
I had a student watch an entire episode of Breaking Bad in my class.
Now, what students and teachers say about the initiative, how it's working, and how they change it.
New spin.
It's out of body for me.
Behind the scenes of Wheel of Fortune with Ryan Seacrest and Vanna White. As Ryan gets ready to take over, Ginger gave it a spin.
Popular morning shows.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Go ahead,
George
give it a nice spin. Now, 600, spell his name.
And get ready.
Welcome to the Van Ryn house.
Are you kidding me? Robin is making the rounds, counting us down to the Emmys, and going back in time.
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
Good morning, America. It's great to have Rebecca here, of course. And Robin is on assignment, as you saw, ahead of the Emmys. She's on the set of some of the most nominated shows this year. That one happened to be one that I binge watched, The Gilded Age.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. And wait until you see what she has for us this morning.
We are looking forward to that, Michael. Also, we can't wait for more of Ginger with Vanna White and Ryan Seacrest. Plus, she is busy today tracking the heat and wildfire alerts in the West and the flash flood threat in the Gulf Coast.
I could spell my name now. Instead, we're going to get to the news. We begin with a demonstration in Israel following the execution of 6 hostages held in Gaza since October 7th. The protesters are demanding a ceasefire, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is standing firm, arguing that making concessions now would send the wrong message to Hamas. Marcus Moore is on the scene in Israel. Good morning, Marcus.
Well, George, good morning. Pressure is mounting on Prime Minister Netanyahu and the government to accept a ceasefire and a hostage release deal, but he is not budging. And once again last night, we saw sadness and frustration in the streets of Israel. Overnight, anger towards Benjamin Netanyahu filling the streets of Israel. Large protest outside the Prime Minister's residence in Jerusalem for a second night after 6 hostages were murdered by Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
The military pressure is not a good system. So there is a time to have an agreement.
Tens of thousands calling on Prime Minister Netanyahu to secure a ceasefire deal that would see the release of all hostages being held by Hamas. In the crowd, 6 symbolic coffins carried representing the 6 who were killed. Demonstrators have just breached a barrier that the security service tried to set up, which is just a few hundred feet from Prime Minister Netanyahu's home. And steadfast on their insistence for a ceasefire deal, Hamas now warning against further military rescue missions from Israel, saying hostages will return, quote, inside coffins. One of the hostages murdered, now laid to rest, Israeli-American Hirsch Goldberg Poland. Thousands lining the streets as a procession made its way to Hirsch's funeral.
Hirsch, we failed you. We all failed you. For 330 days, Mama and I sought the proverbial stone that we could turn over to save you. Maybe, just maybe, your death is the stone, the fuel that will bring home the remaining 101 hostages.
Hirsch's parents, John and Rachel, became advocates for a hostage deal at home and abroad, now saying he is, quote, finally free.
I will love you and I will miss you every single day for the rest of my life. But you're right here. I know you're right here. I just have to teach myself how to feel you in a different way. And Hirsch, there's one last thing I need you to do for us. Now I need you to help us stay strong. And I need you to help us survive.
Netanyahu asking the families of the hostages killed for forgiveness Monday, but adamant that Israel will not be making any additional concessions in the negotiations.
We're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages.
This morning, some are concerned that his defiant and pointed speech could further jeopardize any chances of a negotiated ceasefire, which is what the people we've seen in the streets, many of them have been demanding. And Michael, more demonstrations are planned across Israel tonight.
Thank you, Marcus. And as the demonstrations in Israel play out, President Biden says his team is working around the clock to secure the release of the remaining hostages. Our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, has the latest. Good morning, Selena.
Good morning, Michael. President Biden is ramping up the pressure on Israel and Hamas to reach a deal. President Biden and Vice President Harris were huddled in the Situation Room on Monday with their top aides to strategize on how to move forward with a ceasefire and hostage release deal. President Biden and his team have been trying to negotiate one for months, and it is clear now that the president's patience is running out. Biden flat out said that Netanyahu is not doing enough to get a deal done that would release the hostages. Senior U.S. officials tell me that President Biden is considering presenting a final proposal to Israel and Hamas. If that deal falls apart, it could mean the end of U.S.-led negotiations. Now, the main sticking point in these talks is the Philadelphia corridor. Netanyahu insists on keeping control of this narrow strip of land on the border between Gaza and Egypt, but Hamas refuses. And now with the United Kingdom suspending some weapons shipments to Israel, that ramps up the pressure on President Biden to do more. George?
Okay, Selena, thanks. We're going to get to the race for the White House now. Vice President Kamala Harris hit battleground states on Labor Day, campaigned with President Biden for the first time since she became the nominee. Rachel Scott is tracking the campaign from Washington. Good morning, Rachel.
Hey, George, good morning to you. Yeah, it's been 6 weeks since President Biden dropped out of the race. He's now vowing to be a top surrogate for his own vice president, Kamala Harris. But with Labor Day behind us, this race now officially kicks into high gear, and the very first presidential debate between Harris and Donald Trump just 1 week away.
This morning,
good afternoon, Detroit!
The final sprint to Election Day. Vice President Kamala Harris on a Labor Day swing through the battleground states, campaigning with President Biden for the first time since he dropped out of the race.
Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris our next president of the United States of America?
That first joint appearance taking place in all-important Pennsylvania, aimed at winning over union workers, Biden laying into Donald Trump.
He regards picket lines. He'd rather cross one than walk one. But I have no problem walking the picket line. Never have, nor does Kamala.
Harris following Biden on policy, insisting she opposes the sale of U.S. Steel, headquartered in Pittsburgh, to a Japanese company.
U.S. Steel should remain American-owned and American-operated. And I will always have the back of America's steelworkers.
With some states preparing to kick off early voting in just 2 weeks, polls show a close race heading into the final stretch.
We know this is going to be a tight race to the very end. It's going to be a tight race to the very end. So let's not pay too much attention to those polls.
The former president held no campaign events on Labor Day, but he did go after Harris on social media.
All right, so the focus now does turn toward debate prep. Harris will be huddling with advisors. Former President Donald Trump has brought in one of Harris's former rivals, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. She challenged her on the debate stage back in 2019 to help with his debate prep. George.
Okay, Rich, let's get more on the polls now from Washington Bureau Chief Political Director Rick Klein. Still a tight race.
Yeah, good morning, George. The momentum that Vice President Harris had the last few weeks appears to have stalled, but she retains a slight edge in both national and battleground state polling. Our latest poll with Ipsos shows Harris up 52-46 among likely voters. That's basically where the race was before the Democratic convention. It's still there now. That is better than President Biden was looking when he exited the race a couple weeks back, when he was trailing nationally and in the major battlegrounds. Our 538 polling average now has Harris up slightly, but just slightly, in 6 of the 7 battleground states. This remains pretty close to a toss-up as we enter this critical stretch, George.
One thing we're seeing, gender gap is widening.
Yeah, this is a big shift since before the convention. The vice president now up 13 points among women, while the former president, Trump, is up 5 points among men. That is movement in both directions, and it's driven primarily by white women, who now say they're more likely to support Harris, according to our polling. You get some sense of why this is inside the issues. Harris seen as more trustworthy by far on her ability to handle abortion rights, which is why Trump is trying to find a new position, one would presume. Trump, though, retains a decisive edge on his ability to handle the economy and inflation, as well as the border. And if the election is about personal favorability or trust of the candidates, it now looks like Harris has the edge. But if it's about the most salient issues for voters, including those pocketbook issues and questions around public safety, it remains advantage Trump. George.
Rick Klein, thanks very much. And the first presidential debate between Trump and Vice President Harris is 1 week from tonight. You can see it live right here on ABC. Michael?
All right, thank you, George. Now to 2 U.S. servicemen attacked on the street of Turkey. An apparent anti-American incident that was caught on camera. More than a dozen people are under arrest. Chief Global Affairs Correspondent Martha Raddatz is tracking the story for us. Good morning, Martha.
Good morning, Michael. It was a shocking incident captured on tape. U.S. Marines in civilian clothes on a port call in Turkey, a NATO ally, attacked by a group of nationalists, the mob placing what looked like a bag over the head of one of the young Marines, while another Marine jumped in to help and was assaulted as well. All the while, the attackers yelling in English, "Yankee, go home," over and over. Local police and some other Marines nearby quickly intervened, and the group of attackers was arrested. The Marines were not injured, but taken to the hospital as a precaution, then returned to the ship. The USS Wasp arrived in port on Sunday after taking part in training exercises with Turkish forces. The nationalist group said the attack was carried out in defense of Palestinians. A White House spokesman praised the Turkish police for their rapid response. Rebecca?
Such a brazen attack. Okay, Martha, thank you. We turn now to the investigation into a deadly train shooting in Chicago. Police say 4 people were killed and a suspect was tracked down through surveillance video and taken into custody. Alex Perez is in Chicago with the latest. Good morning, Alex.
Hey, good morning, Rebecca. Still a lot of unanswered questions here, but this terrifying ordeal comes after a string of violent incidents on Chicago's public transportation system. Now, investigators say in all, 4 people were shot and killed about 5:30 a.m. Monday on one of the city's elevated commuter trains. The victims, who were on a Blue Line train in Forest Park, were sleeping when they were shot, according to authorities. Using surveillance videos, investigators say they tracked the suspect, who had jumped to a different train line, and arrested him. A firearm was also recovered. The victims have not yet been identified. Now, as of August 27th, police say 627 violent crimes were reported on the CTA, compared to 547 during the same period last year. Now, authorities believe this was an isolated incident, but an exact motive remains unclear. Michael?
All right, thank you so much for that. We're going to turn now to the Southern California neighborhood facing an evacuation warning because of worsening landslides. Power has now been shut off to more homes. Our chief national correspondent Matt Gutman has the story.
There is no playbook for an emergency like this one.
This morning, power has been shut off indefinitely to this neighborhood in Southern California under an evacuation warning. Gas has already been turned off for 140 homes due to an ongoing landslide in Rancho Palos Verdes.
It's just kind of mind-blowing.
The land has gone from shifting about an inch per year to a foot per week. Soaking rains last spring, now buckling roads and buildings.
The acceleration that's happening currently is beyond what any of us could have foretold.
The governor's office says it's evaluating the appropriate next steps, but without federal or state aid, locals are taking matters into their own hands.
We are in the process of ordering up a solar power system for our house. And essentially, by the time this is over, we're going to be living completely off the grid.
Residents say they're already installing generators to keep sewer lines running.
We're all very resilient, and we're going to fight for it.
Now, the power company says it's unsure when it'll be able to turn the power back on. The concern is shifting earth could affect infrastructure and possibly trigger fires. And while many in the community have stayed through this slow motion disaster, they are under an evacuation warning, which basically tells them they've got to be prepared to leave. Law enforcement has said if evacuation orders come, they'll go house to house to enforce it. Rebecca.
Be prepared for that. Okay, Matt, thank you. We turn now to the U.S. Open and another American woman advancing to the quarterfinals while Tommy Paul came up short. Lara has the highlights. Good morning, Lara.
I sure do. I had to stay up and watch it all. You could not look away. It was a heartbreaker, though, for the American last night. He was so close in both the first and second sets, making Jannik Sinner work for every single point, forcing tiebreaks. But in the end, Sinner showed everyone why he is the one to beat.
Game. This morning, world number one Jannik Sinner headed to the quarterfinals after fending off 2 tiebreaks from American Tommy Paul to beat him in straight sets.
I'm happy about the win today.
It was revealed last week that Sinner tested positive twice for an anabolic steroid, but faced no suspension because he was unaware it was given to him. American Jessica Pegula punching her ticket to the quarterfinals, easily winning her 4th-round match. Pegula making the U.S. Open quarterfinals for the 2nd time, one of 4 American singles players advancing.
It's always nice being an American here and getting all the support.
In mixed doubles, some mixed troubles as defending champs Anna Danilina and Hari Haliavara were dethroned by Donald Young and Taylor Townsend. Haliavara not taking the loss very well, snapping his racket in 2. Meanwhile, Yulia Putintseva is apologizing for her bad behavior towards a ball girl. A visibly angry Putintseva appearing to snub the ball girl, letting 2 balls hit her before making an attempt to catch the 3rd. The move drawing fierce boos from the crowd. The USTA not commenting on the incident, but former tennis champ Boris Becker is, posting terrible behavior towards the ball girl. Putintseva later apologizing on social media, writing, "I want to apologize to the ball girl for the way I was when she was giving me balls. Honestly speaking, it was not about her."
All right, and a lot of people are also complaining about how late these matches are going. It's happening more and more. Grand Slam winner Andy Murray, who just retired at the Olympics, weighed in last night. He wrote, quote, "The tennis scheduling situation is a total mess. It looks so amateurish, having matches going on at 2, 3, 4 a.m. Sort it out." And another vet, Pam Shriver, says one way to do it is to cut the men's matches down from best of 5 to best of 3 sets, just like the women do. That seems like a great strategy and would also show equality.
You know, it's tough for the viewers, imagine 2 or 3 in the morning, but if you're playing, 2 or 3 in the morning, it's late for them too.
And then looking forward, knowing that you have another match coming.
Right. Yeah.
That's tough on everybody.
Well,
see if they fix it. Thank you, Lara.